This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is another episode of the Subway to Shea series preview. Trying not to get myself a little tongue-tied there. But Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news happening surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. And I got my good friend here, good buddy here, Tyler Ward, a.k.a. Wardy NYM, fresh off his hit on WFAN with Salicata on their YouTube channel. That did a nice little live there. Great to see you on there, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thank you so much for the little shout there. That was a really cool experience. For people that are watching this that know me, that knows kind of I had a little history with Sal as well. So there was a lot of anticipation with how it would go. I won't spoil it for anybody. I'll let you guys go watch and find out yourself, and it will be available also in audio format and podcast form later today or tomorrow on the fans site per usual. But thank you so much for having me on. Always love talking shop with you. That's something that's going to be a commonality with you and I a lot this season too, especially on my channel, which I'm very excited about. And I'm really looking forward to getting into this series preview. The Mets are playing good baseball, Anthony. We got good things to discuss today.
Yeah, absolutely. Good play from the Mets all around this past weekend. It's crazy to think they started off 1-5 in their initial homestand. They come back for the second one and they go 5-1. Now 2 games over 500 at 10-8. A whole different view that we're getting from this Mets team. Shout out to the 43 people that have just jumped on here, and it keeps skyrocketing up to 47 now that are in this room. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you're subscribing to Subway to Shea, and make sure you're subscribing to Wardy NYM as well on YouTube. We'll get to your comments and questions over the next 50 minutes or so here. I always like to start off the show with a series recap. So we are going to get into that real quick, a series recap of this Mets-Pirates series. Like we said, sweep of the Pirates here. Mets win their 4th straight series and their first series sweep of the season. Over 500 for the first time this year. 10-3 after starting 0-5. Mets getting contributions from the most unlikely heroes in that bottom of the order. Bader, Tyrone Taylor, DJ Stewart, and Joey Wendell as well. You could throw him in there. Pinch hitting has been great. Got a nice bounce back from Adrian Hauser. Jose Quintana has kind of been that Mr. Consistency in the rotation. And you got that strength in the bullpen, which is great to see. Little concern with Brett Batty, but not get too serious with his injury in game 2. So not too much to worry there. We'll probably get into that as well. And how about more of this Luis Severino, please? 2-1, 2.14 ERA. Wardy, anything I missed here or anything you want to hone in on from this series with the Pirates?
Just a lot of awesome late heroics by Harrison Bader. Again, him to have back-to-back games as well that we saw over this past week's stretch of, 8th inning rally, just brilliance has been tremendous. Tyrone Taylor's contributions with the big 3-hit game yesterday as well. I mean, DJ Stewart too. I mean, just everybody's getting involved. And what I'm loving so much about this Mets team is something that they had 0 of last year. And that's a clutchness. It's a swagger. It's a I'm not going to roll over and die the way I did throughout the first 5 games mentality. This team is a shell of what they once looked like earlier this season. And you just got to hope the great vibes continue. And as I said on the fan earlier, and I'll say it here again, I still feel like the best is yet to come with this team, with the success they're having without Francisco Lindor doing any true positive contribution to warrant saying, okay, Lindor is a positive X factor as our core player, to not even have JD Martinez barely swinging a bat right now with his broken back. Obviously, I'm exaggerating on the broken back part, but still. And then you got Kodai Senga, right? Your ace has yet to even throw on the mound for you. So, and, not only this series, but just this past, 10 to 13 game stretch, again, 10-3 in your past 13 games. I got to ask you, just what is your overall emotions and reactions, and what has been your biggest takeaway from that Pirates series in particular? And as we transition then into the LA Dodgers series, what are you most excited for?
Yeah, I definitely tried not to get too, hysterical over the 0-5 start, knowing it was very early in the season. that things could turn around. I mean, I saw it in 2005 when Willie Randolph became manager. They started off 0-5. They needed a little spark from Pedro Martinez to kind of turn the ship around, and they got that. Same kind of thing has happened here this season as well. And something that I like is in the Pirates series that you mentioned, it's not even from them winning. It's from the loss. It's their ability to fight back. Whereas you would think that they would just give in and lose, where you would knew they lose that game. This season's a little bit different. Even in that second game of the Braves series, so they had that fight in them, something that we felt that was missing, all of last year and at the end of 2022, where if they were down by, 5 or 6 runs, the game was pretty much over. But, this season, you're seeing that fight in this entire lineup. And the fact that Lindor hasn't really produced. And honestly, Brandon Nimmo can be thrown in there as well. He has kind of not been Brandon Nimmo we saw last season.
He's been up and down. Lots of power, but not necessarily the OBP guy each day that you'd expect.
Yeah, a lot of strikeouts as well you can throw in there. Jeff McNeil hasn't really hit, and he has to have a really good batting average and bat around 300 to really be worthwhile in this lineup. And he really hasn't done that, although he has had some key hits. I'll give him that.
He's finally starting to heat up. We're starting to see it now.
Yeah, we're finally starting to see him heat up. But I think the most important thing is we all remember that even for most of 2022 and all of 2023, that the bottom of the order was basically like Death Valley. Like they weren't getting any contributions from anyone. And you turn into this year, and David Stearns brings in Tyrone Taylor, who has been the biggest blessing as a backup outfielder that you've wanted, and we probably all wanted for years. And now you have Harrison Bader, who was brought in here, most importantly, to hit lefties, and he's done that. He's done that and then some. To see his contributions as well over the last, this series and the last game of last series, basically he's pretty much been hitting since Atlanta. So it's good to see him get off to this great start as well. And, DJ Stewart pinch hitting. You got the pinch hit from Joey Wendell and stuff you weren't seeing from guys like Darren Ruff last year, Daniel Vogelback. It's great to see that kind of change.
You say team. Darren Ruff. It's the fact that the Mets started last year with him in spring training. Like that actually happened. Daniel Vogelback and Darren Ruff, you can see the differences. You see how much of a difference just them not being here makes? It's insane. Big difference.
Our guy Ibby from Till Mets Do Us Part. Tyrone Taylor is tied for second on the Mets with 10 RBIs. He's got an OPS at 814. You love to see it. And yeah, man, I mean, he could be a legit starter right now. I know you don't like to give those backup guys too much playing time. I think that Carlos Mendoza has kind of been hitting all the right buttons, whereas we thought that, maybe he was a little over his head to start the season. Right now, he's hitting all the right buttons. And I don't know if you read Will Salmon's article this past week from The Athletic. Great read on Carlos Mendoza and how he has kind of, the fact that he's not calling that rah-rah team meeting, but is meeting with everybody individually, especially a guy like DJ Stewart, who, honestly, his time is going to be limited. Not to mention that JD Martinez is on his way, but he's got an option. So it makes it easier to send someone like him down. And the fact that he didn't know where he was going to live at this point in time, if he had to, get ready to start moving down to Port St. Lucie or wherever, Syracuse or wherever they would put him. The fact that Mendy, pulled him to side and talked with him and worked things out with him, to the fact that he had confidence enough to pinch hit him, and every pinch hit has been successful so far for DJ Stewart. You got to be excited by the way Mendy has kind of turned around what was a kind of a horrific start to the season, almost capped off by a no-hitter. So, thankfully enough, Pete Alonso hit that home run in the 9th, and everything has turned around from there.
It has turned around from there. And some awesome points about Mendy. Again, what I told a lot of Mets fans initially heading into the season, expect a lot of highs, expect a lot of lows. We're going to go through these trials and tribulations with Mendy as a first-time manager. There's going to be times where you're going to want to cut off his head, and you're like, I'm absolutely done with him as Mets manager. Then you're going to have moments where you're like, oh, wow, we're actually seeing a young, exciting manager blossom before our very eyes. When did we see Buck Showalter going out of his way to cheer for the team consistently when rallies are happening. I understand there's a huge different dynamic between being a veteran manager on a veteran-led club with Justin Verlander, with Max Scherzer, those types. But now this Mets team that, again, is younger, hungry, underdog type story this year, Mendoza feels like the perfect fit. And when it comes to being the right vibe guy for them, I think he's going over everything so well. Let's not forget his time with the Yankees, too. One of the biggest things I heard raving about him from Anthony Volpe and other players was just how personable he is. And he would be the driver in team meetings when he was with the Yanks. So, like, there's a significant role he had for a long period of time with the Bronx Bombers that he's now taking here with the Mets. And we're seeing it before our very eyes. We're watching his growth. We're watching him have faith in certain relievers, or in the beginning stages of the season was really finding out the hard way, what works and what doesn't. And it's all about, how do you learn from the mistakes you make, especially as a young manager? I think Mendoza has done a tremendous job, not just in the winning streak, but more so in the manner in which the Mets are winning. He's making these guys, it starts with Brett Beatty's pinch hit 3-run bomb against a lefty over a week and a half ago, right? It starts there with the pinch hit contributions being so significant. I mean, every game now, we're expecting one of the guys that's initially off the bench, whether it's Tyrone Taylor, Harrison Bader, DJ Stewart, and to a much lesser degree, Zach Short, because he's truly the only guy thus far that really hasn't provided anything of significance. Outside of that, though, all these guys, you have a confidence level where by the time we get to, say, the 6th, 7th, 8th inning, it is not time to count them out. We're getting these rally vibes. We're getting this bench mob vibe, but with more quality. Instead of worrying about Jonathan VR, Tomas Nido, Kevin Pillar, you're now worrying about a Tyrone Taylor that's very much an everyday outfielder for a lot of teams in Major League Baseball. That's splitting time, platooning as your third or fourth. And DJ Stewart, that's surprising a lot of people, still including myself, just in the sense of his first couple home runs were awesome, but they were against subpar pitching. And I took that into account. He was just ripping meatballs. That's like, how do you not eat that up? But again, that's still a difference. Those are fastballs that JD Davis swings through to this day. These differences are certainly amplified, and we're seeing it before our very eyes. So once JD Martinez is in the fold here and is getting some consistency going after he's ramped up and everything, there's a lot of excitement there. But yeah, to your point about Carlos Mendoza, he has the players in the right mentality. They're playing loose. They're playing comfortable. And even with a guy like Lindor pressing, he's going to get out of it. And that's why you're seeing the team rally around him, because they don't view it as a doom and gloom. Like, oh no, if my star player can't perform, the entire rest of the team is cooked. We saw that how many times last year? If Alonso didn't have it, if Lindor didn't have it, if especially Jeff didn't have it, this Mets team had nothing, because they really were falling in dominoes. It was like everything was in unison when they weren't going well. Now we're finally at a stage with a young, hungry Mets team under Mendoza where they have the mentality again to not roll over and die, and they're having an excitement level. And again, the young influx of Francisco Alvarez, Brett Beatty, these guys make a difference, absolutely, because they're becoming the new young core to add on with Alonso, Lindor, McNeil, Nimmo. So I cannot say enough great things about how Mendoza has already evolved in this short period of time throughout the first 3 weeks of the season.
A lot of fans at the beginning of the season did not want him because of the Yankee ties, and I could not have skewed that in the opposite direction as much as I could, because I want a guy that has that experience in New York. As you're talking about in the Bronx with the Yankees, I know he was just a bench coach, but there was a lot to learn there, I guess, sitting behind Aaron Boone, who, say what you want about him, but we kind of want to be where they're at right now and making the playoffs every year, minus the last year. But every year he's been in the playoffs. So, that's what I want to be at. And to see Mendy come in here, like you said, do what he has done. I don't think also that there was that collaboration between Buck and Billy Epler. I mean, we saw through the tea leaves, and then we saw the cracks at the end of the season, and then all the articles that came out about them not working together.
Right after, I wonder who that was. But
yeah,
I'm not gonna sit here and assume, but I do find it a little comical that shortly after Buck's tenure, we find an anonymous source that, Buck and Billy were butting heads. One wanted Daniel Vogelbach playing a save face for a lopsided trade, the other didn't. I'm on Buck's side with that one. And then, now you're going to tell me that Epler was manipulating the system for the, the Phantom IL that every single team in Major League Baseball does. I'll leave you with that one. But yes, the dynamic is not what it is right now with Mendoza and Stearns, to say the least.
Yeah. Even with what, our guy CP is saying right here, the Mets outfield rotation right now is stellar. Mendoza giving everyone necessary rests with the DH rotation. You can include the bullpen as well, because the rotation really hasn't, outside of yesterday, where we finally got 6 innings from a pitcher, thankfully from Luis Severino.
Dog.
Outside of that, it has been 4 innings every night of this bullpen having to come in and do this. And not only the rotation that has been made by Carlos Mendoza, but the fact that David Stearns is able to pull in and take out and pluck in and put in these pieces almost like weekly from the minor leagues and from the major league roster. I think that so far he has done a brilliant job, and that's why they have the best ERA right now in the National League. And this is with Edwin Diaz not really, lighting it up with his velocity with his fastball. I mean, he's still able to get the outs needed. And I'm pretty sure it's doing with having to come back from this injury and not really lighting it up to start the season, which I'm okay with. But I know there was this concern about his velocity and his pitches, but so far so good, man.
Yeah, so far so good. And just to add briefly on velo, because we saw David Stearns again was asked that in the most recent presser of the past day or so. He said his concern level isn't there. Diaz has been pitching on back-to-back days in multiple scenarios. And let's not forget, this is a guy that, again, went a whole calendar year without throwing a pitch for the most part, okay? It's okay if he slow rolls. You want to know the best part about this situation? Edwin Diaz is doing everything we need him to when he doesn't even have his best stuff. That's the beauty of it. Like, that's another thing that we can't forget. Like, the Mets went on a 10-3 run in their past 13 games with Edwin Diaz sitting more in the mid-90s than touching a hundo on the gun. Not even looking fantastic in every outing he's been out there. He gave up that bomb to Vinny Pasquantino. We love Vinny, no problems with him. But the Mets still got the save. They got the job done. So, again, as long as the results are still there, the flamethrowing will come. But let's also not forget, too, with all the injuries going on in baseball, the last thing we want is Edwin to go 0 to 100, and then, bam, we lose him again. We're thankful that the injury that he sustained a year plus ago was nothing regarding his true mechanics when it comes to that arm, when it comes to that UCL. So, yeah, I have no concerns on the Diaz front. I'd argue it's a good thing that he's a little bit more of a not soft tossing when you're touching 95 to 97, but soft tossing for a guy that usually sits 99, 100 on the gun. He has that in the back pocket when he needs it, but if you don't need it right now, don't use it. I think that's where we're at, and I think that's a good thing.
I think we all said coming back from this injury this season that we never thought that Edwin Diaz would kind of recreate that magic that he did in 2022. We all thought he was going to be good, but like that was probably one of the best relief seasons that we saw from, a Mets closer in history. So the fact that, he's able to do, just like you said, what he's able to do right now without his best stuff. And that's kind of like the Mets calling card right now, doing the best with what you have, because like you said, they don't have Kodai Senga. They don't have JD Martinez. Edwin Diaz is not, topping 100 right now, but the Mets are still finding ways to win with the team that they have. They don't have flamethrowers in the rotation, but they got guys that are consistent, are going to give you 5 innings, maybe give up a 2 runs, 3 runs, just like I talked about with Jose Quintana. And it just seems to be working right now. And the team is deep, just like Carson's saying, chucking millions of dollars at names that will bleed if they don't perform. It's been working for the Mets. I think we saw the other night, it was Blake Snell. He had a rough outing himself. So, it's...
Who's shocked by that? Not me. Come on.
But yeah, man, this is really has been such a turnaround for this team. And, I got greedy. I wanted to get the sweep here because, heading into the West Coast trip with the Dodgers and the Giants on the horizon, that, anything can happen, especially with this Dodgers team, which we're going to get into shortly. But one question that was, posed in here by Tom Girard, and I want to talk to you about it because we both know that Francisco Lindor is going to come out of this funk eventually. But I posed the question the other day, and Tom is posting it in here. Like, is it time to start thinking about flip-flopping him somewhere in the order? I don't know if Alvarez is the guy, because even Alvarez has been struggling. He struggled over this weekend and this series. But is it time to you just move Lindor a little bit just so he gets out of this funk?
I would say yes if the Mets were below 500 over their past 13 game stretch, and Lindor was a clear problem into the lack of success the Mets are having. The fact that they're rolling right now with pretty much a stagnant lineup every day, with the only things interchanging is Narvaez catching or not, which can go in hand with the 8 and 9 hitter. If it ain't broke, why fix it? Right? I know it's an old simple term, but it holds true here. And I know that there are fans that really want Lindor down in the order. I'm not opposed to that personally, but I'm telling you right now, not a chance in heck it's going to happen. And the reason why is exactly what I just said. Mendoza is very happy with the production they're getting from the team as a whole right now. They finally feel like they have in unison a structure that's working. Until that structure deviates and you start to see, a losing streak or guys really getting in slump more than just Lindor, let's say 3-4 key players in the lineup, then that's where you mix things up. But not in the case where you're winning 10 of your past 13 without Lindor even having much positive production. So again, it's a ticking time bomb for Lindor to break out. His BABIP, especially from the left side of the plate, he's been one of the most unlucky hitters in Major League Baseball. And that's not an understatement. That's a fact. A lot of times when he's made contact and has roped baseballs from the left side, they have unfortunately not been in the gap. It has just been terrible luck right into the glove of the corner outfielder, center fielder, what have you. So while Lindor, yes, he's been very underwhelming, a very slow start, especially from the left side of the plate, do not anticipate him to move significantly in the order whatsoever right now until we see Lindor actually being a factor into the Mets single-handedly losing ball games. If their continuation from the 0-5 start happened at this point, I promise you Lindor would have been moved already to a fair significant amount. Even when you know what you have in him, you got to mix things up for the sake of mixing things up. Right now, why stir the pot if you have things going? Just hope that Lindor can start to break out, because once he does, you got a very deep lineup on your hands with JD Martinez knocking on the door.
The guy behind him just won Player of the Month in Pete Alonso. I think he has 6 or 7 home runs right now. Off the top of my head, I can't. I'll have to pull up the stats here. But Pete Alonso won. Did I say Player of the Month? I meant Player of the Week. I think I might have said Player of the Month,
though. Let's continue this, Pete.
Yeah,
Give me another couple weeks of
let's
this.
get him there. Let's definitely get him there. What are your thoughts right now on Pete's start? Kind of uneven to begin, but definitely we all know the power's there and it'll be there. I think they had him. I think it was Gary who said that, he's on pace for 69 home runs at the moment. Nice. I don't see that, but I'm going to have him maybe a little bit over 45 home runs. I think that was the bet at the beginning of the season, the props that were out there was, I think, 45 and a half home runs.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think for my amazing sponsor at BetUS. I think they had him at 42 and a half. And like, if you're picking 40s for Pete, I mean, you're being as conservative as you can get. Pete Alonso in a walk year, he's at least hitting 50 bombs. Like, I'm saying that with the utmost confidence in the world. So he's got 6 bombs already this season. He's one of the league leaders already in that regard. I think whoever has the most either has 7 or 8. I know Tyler O'Neill had 7 a couple days ago, but I'm sure it's changed since then. Right now we're looking at a 261 average, a 354 OBP, a 551 slug, a 152 WRC plus, so over 50% better than the average batter. This is very much along the lines on what you can probably expect from Pete Alonso this year. And this is exactly the kind of Pete Alonso that we're clamoring for. We want an Alonso that can hit, of course, better than the 220 or so he did last year. We want the contact ability there, so that way he's not so boom or bust doing his best Schwarber impression. When Alonso's right, he can hit for opposite field. He can go up the middle. And again, Pete Alonso, crazy enough, is actually fantastic in clutch situations. He hasn't had too many of them in his Mets tenure thus far, but when he is in those spots, his numbers are far better than maybe what you would initially think or realize. So Alonso's thriving there in the 4-hole, and while I don't love him not having a necessarily guaranteed AB every first inning, I'm not opposed to it as long as we know Brandon Nimmo is going to be that plate setter that we know very well. If he gets on base, and already we're likely going to see Alonso in the first, of trying to avoid that Lindor double play prior. But it's important to see that Alonso is getting off to the exact kind of start that I think he was looking for. And this is something that we should expect throughout the entire course of the year. I don't expect him to really deviate too high or too low from this production. You're going to get around that 250 range, hopefully 350 to north of 400 in the OBP when things are really going right, and a slug anywhere from 550 to 600 plus. Like, that's Pete Alonso in a nutshell. So I'd say he's doing pretty much exactly what I'd hope he'd be doing after what was a brutal away trip up until the end of that Braves series, right? If it wasn't for that, he was horrendous in that Cincy series. He didn't hit a lick.
Yeah.
So it's going to be curious to see how he does in this big Dodger matchup. He's had success against the Dodgers in the past. Really curious to see how he does in this one.
Yeah, this is a series where I feel like our top players usually shine. Like, we get some good at-bats in LA from Lindor and Alonso and Nimmo. So, and I think Nimmo had a great series last season, even defensively in LA last year. So we'll see what happens with them. Another batter that I want to talk about from the lineup, CP mentioning what's the perfect spot for McNeil as he's starting to heat up. You know, we've seen him all over the place, and that's what we usually do. Every year he's all over the lineup. But what do you think is the perfect spot for him in this lineup? He's batting .218 right now. It's 1 home run, 6 RBIs, has a .655 OPS. He doesn't really hit much home runs, so his slugging's very low, 327.
Keep his butt in the 7th spot. That's where I want Jeff McNeil. Enough of the nonsense to anyone that wants him batting cleanup this year. Miss me with that. I got a bridge to sell you. I hate it. I'm sorry. Jeff still has a lot that he needs to work on with his game to be the Jeff McNeil that we've known and loved on a consistent basis. He's still not there yet. He's showing strides, and he's showing strides while being in a deep Mets lineup where, again, he's going to get attacked more than the guys ahead of him, and sometimes the guys below him too. Because if you say got a Tyrone Taylor in that spot that says batting 8th, or someone that's having a little bit of a hot streak over the past week, pitchers will take that into account versus a McNeil where we know he can get hot-headed fast, but when Jeff is right, he is performing at a 3-hit rate. He's spreading for opposite field, and he is driving in runs with 2 outs. That's McNeil at his best. I think he needs to stay in the 7th spot. I think CP actually said in the comments too, and he hit the nail on the head. I don't want him higher. I don't want him lower. I just want him right there. Hitting 7th makes so much sense because let's say when JD Martinez is here, right? You're starting off Brandon Nimmo. Then you're going to have there, and again, how they're rolling things right now is with Marte batting 2nd. I wouldn't be surprised if that deviates throughout the year, though, if they end up wanting to move Alonso up. But for time being, you got Nimmo 1, Marte 2, Lindor 3, Alonso 4. Once he's here, JD Martinez 5. So you could even make the argument at that point, you could toy between McNeil at 7th or 8th, right? Do you want to then go in any which way, however you prefer, Alvarez, Batty? Do you want them to stay back-to-back? Or do you want McNeil between them then, knowing that you still have a weapon in, say, Batty? Like, I would argue right now, for me, and Carson will say the same here in the live chat because, you know, him and I have the same viewpoint with this. I want our best hitters as high in the order as possible.
Absolutely.
So if Batty is going to continue the role the way he is once he's back from that hammy injury, and he will be back at the Dodgers series 100%, you have to make an argument here. Like, what makes more sense? Potentially putting Jeff in between Alvarez and Batty, or potentially having, again, Alvarez, Batty, McNeil, Jeff all the way at 8. I think that's where it would be justified, but more often than not, 7th spot, I think, makes a lot of sense for McNeil.
What is it? Ibby puts somewhere in the 7 to 9 range. Now, I want to ask you this. I know it's not going to last forever, but if Bader continues to be hot, would you consider dropping McNeil to number 9? It's crossing my mind a little bit.
So here's the answer to this, and it comes with a follow-up question to you. What do you prefer? Do you prefer a 9 hitter that exemplifies speed, that's getting on base at a solid clip right now, where you know he can be more of a weapon when he is on the base paths and not being a dummy rounding first, thinking he can leg out a single into a double? Or do you rather a Jeff McNeil that is still very much up in the air on his consistency with the hitting, and by having him all the way there in the 9 hole, again, you are sacrificing that potential risk with Bader. So, like, I think personally, I think you keep Bader where he is. More often than not, I want him batting 9th because he's doing what you want your 9 hitter to do. I know it might sound crazy, but there's a level of me that has a little more faith in Bader when it comes to the clutch factor late in game than Jeff, just depending on the matchup. Some matchups really have me concerned with Jeff, and while Bader concerns me a lot against righties because his past year and a half splits will tell you he is a far superior hitter against lefties. Bader is also now surprising us and feeding off of this vibe and momentum that comes with the club. And he is hitting against righties too. So matchups, of course, are the big thing to take away from this. But I'm not one of those people that feels the need that Bader needs to be moved with McNeil right now. I think, again, as I said before, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Keep rolling with what you got. And when things really start to go downward, if they do go downward, then reevaluate as Mendoza will and make your decisions with the lineup then.
Keith makes the best point. We'll have the best 7th and 8th hole hitters very soon, a very lethal tool for a ball club, which I agree with. And you mentioned number 6, Batty, 7, Francisco Alvarez. I kind of like that, where it is at this point in time. And I don't think Alvarez is going to climb the lineup, considering, JD Martinez is on his way back. Maybe for now he'll bat a little higher, but I do like Brett Batty, batting right now, right after Pete. There's just a different energy right now about Brett Batty. You get the vibe. I felt like it started in Cincinnati with his defense, which has been outstanding, to say the least, because that was the big concern for us so far. But, with him at bat and having, some big RBIs for this team, I think he's got 9 right now. So he's, what is he, third, I think, on the team, 3rd or 4th on the team in RBIs right now. But I will say this, I don't know if you get this feeling from the lineup when he's in it, but Sunday, the Mets were getting shut out by Reagan's in Kansas City. They insert Brett Batty into the lineup, and it feels like just everything changed. Everyone was taking more pitches, and I'm not saying it's all on Batty, but just bringing him back into the lineup. He got a hit. He got a very crucial walk in the time where they scored the 2 runs with Bader. So I feel like, Batty has become an important component to this team, whereas at the beginning of the season, we didn't even know if he was going to win the third base job.
Batty has single-handedly, all thanks to himself this year, went from a guy that was insecure, uncomfortable at the plate, went through a lot of mental ups and downs in the 162 after the job was handed to him once they traded away Eduardo Escobar, didn't take enough advantage of that opportunity, worked his absolute tail off this offseason, and is now a completely different player in the best way possible. Not that he automatically changed his swing drastically, not that he's completely changed his defensive game. A lot of the same mechanics are there, but they're just so much better. He's looking like the guy, again, the Mets drafted with their 1st-round pick a couple years ago, and why he's been deemed as a top third base prospect in baseball, a top overall prospect just a mere year plus ago. Batty, without him right now, this Mets team wouldn't nearly be where they are. He's still batting over 300. He's climbing up that OPS ladder too. He was on an absolute hit streak like no tomorrow. I think he had at least 7 to 8 games of straight games with a hit, if I'm not mistaken. And what looks so good about Batty is the confidence. It's the swagger. That's what the rest of the team is feeding off of. That's what I was alluding to when I said this new young core and himself and Alvarez are really starting to feed off onto the other players in the clubhouse, including the veterans. When you got Batty having a smirk at the plate right before he rips like a 2-run double, and then he's doing the mellow at second, like that is a guy in the most comfortable zone possible. He's not only locked in, but he's feeling swaggy. He's playing the game he wants to play. And he's not playing the game that, a lot of fans are saying, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. No, he worked his butt off to get where he is, to play what we've seen in many instances. Not every game, because of course he still has some fine tuning on the defensive end, but he's making Gold Glove caliber plays on an almost nightly basis there. And it's not that he's making Gold Glove caliber plays because he's out of position. He's making them while in the position. So just to emphasize this a little bit further, we all love David Wright. David is deemed by many as the best third baseman in Mets history, and rightfully so, including myself. What we're seeing is a Brett Batty that is doing something we haven't seen since prime David Wright. We haven't seen someone come in and comfortably handle the hot corner, or, they weren't just a glaring hole offensively right away, or they had major defensive hiccups. We can go down the list of all the guys since David's retired. There has been no consistency there. Brett Batty is taking advantage of a Ronnie Mauricio out for the year with injury, because Ronnie, and I can tell you this, I can tell you all, folks, I literally heard from players within the organization themselves say Ronnie was expected to be the Mets starting third baseman this season. It was Ronnie's job to lose initially heading into spring training. That injury, of course, impacts his future, but it impacted Batty's future. And Batty did something he did not do last year when Escobar was traded. He took advantage of the opportunity. Batty's looking fantastic. And now we have ourselves a true lethal lefty bat in this lineup outside of Nimmo, outside of Lindor when he is swinging right, outside of McNeil when he's swinging right. And he's showcasing the power, the ability to go opposite field. He is looking like a guy that we have been hoping for. And it's awesome to see a young in-house talent similar to Alonso, while not to the same magnitude power-wise, but a homegrown talent that's blossoming before our very eyes. And we're getting it at the most perfect time in a year where we're giving the keys to Batty. We're giving the keys to some of these players to see what we have before maybe making a rash decision under Billy Epler to say, okay, let's go buy Matt Chapman, which would make no sense whatsoever. So very happy with Brett Batty and his production, and I hope it continues. But even though he's going to have his slumps, I'm still going to be trying to pick him up because we are seeing before our very eyes what Batty can mean for this team on the offensive and defensive end, and it's massive.
You know, if Batty is able to stay consistent throughout the season, obviously, like you said, he's going to go through his slumps and stuff like that. But if he's able to stay consistent and kind of grab hold of third base, honestly, I think it's for the better because I like Ronnie Mauricio at second base. From what I saw on the field with Ronnie Mauricio, I still think to this day he's a better second baseman than he is a third baseman. And for Jeff McNeil, unfortunately, that would be probably his spot, to lose. But Ronnie Mauricio coming in and to go along with Lindor and then Batty at third, who, let's all be fair. A lot of people were saying that he wasn't working out with Lindor, but he was. They just did not film it.
Right.
they were working together. So it's nice to see that whole dynamic work out. But I definitely would prefer if Ronnie Mauricio comes back and is playing second base. I don't know if you have the same feelings from what you saw in his play on the field.
So I don't want to put too much stock into his sample size on the defensive end last year, just because I think there's a lot of question marks with Mauricio and how he fits the team. And now with Batty thriving the way he is, it's an even bigger question mark because it's like, okay, you thought that this guy could potentially be the guy that's at your hot corner for the future. But unless things drastically change negatively for Batty, and God willing, knocking on wood, that doesn't happen, Mauricio now is falling in the category the same as Jet Williams and Luis Angel Acuna. You got yourself a big log jam there for your second base options after McNeil. Jeff, of course, will play corner outfield at times this season. We've already seen it. I've already been a little surprised that we've seen him in the corner a couple more times than I initially expected. But I understand based on matchups, based on trying to have that positional diversity with the DH spot until JDM's here, stuff like that. But Mauricio has looked sharp definitely at times defensively. For me, I'm just more curious about once he does return, what do the Mets decide to do with him? Because I'm not really banking on much from Mauricio this year. He wouldn't be back until really the latter half of things. But if he does return and is impactful, great, awesome. That'd be awesome to see. But I'm not banking on it. So let's just say hypothetically we're in 2025, right? And the Mets have made an avenue either by trading McNeil or by parting ways with some other guys on the roster where there is potential for Mauricio. That is where I'm curious to see how that all pans out, because at second, he's looked fine. You could argue he's definitely looking better there than third base. But for me, I just care about what makes most sense fit-wise, because right now, you can make the argument that Mauricio, as valuable as he is to the organization, isn't just valuable for his impact on the club, but he's also just as valuable for his potential value in a deal should the Mets want to look for something bigger and maybe a more position of need by time we get to the deadline, if not next offseason. So there's a lot to evaluate Mauricio. I love him, though. I don't want him gone, but we are kind of in that category now where it does make a level of sense if you're throwing him in certain trade discussions.
And it's certainly possible, right? The Mets have built up this depth in the farm system, as well as now just an overall organizational depth to this team. We see it with the rotation. We see it with the bullpen. And it's something that was missing over the last couple of years. And to be able to have this and, use it if we need to for trading, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm never a prospect hugger per se, but it's great to have the option to be able to, pull off a trade here and there if we need to. 224 people in this room right now. Thank you so much, guys, everyone, for tuning in here. Make sure you hit the like. Make sure you subscribe to both me and Wardy, a good friend of mine who's got a lot of content coming through, man. You got your daily previews, daily recaps. You're all over the place on WFAN today. I mean, you're doing it all, man.
It's a lot. It's a lot, but I'm loving and enjoying every single second of it. And I'm even more excited to be doing more work, especially with you this year. I'm really looking forward to getting that all unveiled and unraveled. Yeah, both of us. That's the main. It's funny. I was actually texting Pat Ragazzo earlier today too, and he was crediting me on just like how much has happened since I've started. I'm like, same to you, same thing with you, Ant. Like we're all growing in the community together. And it's awesome too, being friends with you, being friends with Pat and all these other great people, including people in the chat, whether it's Ibby, whether it's Keith, whether it's Carson, whether it's CP, what have you. It is awesome to see everyone continuing to thrive, sticking with what they're doing, being consistent, because that is how you make it in this field. And Mets community, there's nothing else like it too. I mean, it's for as saturated of a space as it is so much fun at the same time, because I can turn to you and I know I'm going to get one opinion. I can turn to someone else and I know it's going to be a drastically different opinion. So it's like you pick and choose each day, kind of like how you want to go about these things. And I've been enjoying the ride every step of the way.
Well, it's awesome to be a part of this, not only Mets community, but the content creator like verse that we have going on here. So always appreciate that. Before I let you go, because I know you're short on time, we definitely do have to do the series preview.
Oh, you mean we have to talk about the thing that the show's supposed to be about? Of course. Why not? Let's get into it.
Let's throw up the pitching probables up here. And, shout out to Carson, because the bottom of this,
I like the graphic. I like the little
appreciate
boxes.
That.
It's very
clean.
The
little pitching preview that I have going on here. We know it's set for game 1, Sean Manaea versus Yoshinobu Yamamoto. The games 2 and game 3, right now on the Mets website and on the Dodgers website, they don't have anyone listed, but Carson looked it up for me on Fangraphs, and at the moment, this is kind of what it's looking like. Jose Butto versus Gavin Stone in game 2, Adrian Hauser versus James Paxton in game 3. Which of these, I guess, games are you, or maybe pitching matchups, are you looking forward to the most?
I'm going to let you answer that question.
Which
one do you think I'm looking forward to the most?
Well, I'm going to say the Yamamoto. A Yamamoto beatdown is what you want to see.
Yes, I'm looking at this Dodgers 1-2-3, and I'm looking at batting practice right now. And it's funny to say that when you got Sean Manaea, Jose Butto, Adrian Hauser as your 1-2-3, like without knowing the context of how they've been so far this season and just seeing the matchup in LA, you're like, oh my God, that's terrible. But it really isn't as bad as it looks. And this is going to be a big character series for the Mets too on the pitching front. Manaea unfortunately got his tit slit last start. Marte didn't know how to play a normal ball in right field. A lot of things didn't go good, and the Mets still made that a competitive ball game, losing 11-7 this past Saturday. Jose Butto has been the Mets' best starter this season. He's the only starter to go multiple outings now, 6 innings, looking great, loving everything from Butto. And then you got there, and who was the Adrian Hauser as well? Hauser, I think, is going to get rocked. I think Hauser is going to get rocked like the Atlanta Braves series, unless this Dodgers lineup really shows just how much they're struggling right now. But game 1, Manaea, seeing how he can bounce back against a Dodgers team that he's known very well. He saw plenty the past couple of years with the Giants, and then, of course, in 2022 with the Padres, where they beat up on him big time. What is the difference going to be like this time around? And for Yamamoto, he's finally starting to show his stuff, but he's still very hittable. He's not looking like the absolute best pitcher in Major League Baseball at the moment. And I want the Mets to show to Yamamoto and show to the Dodgers why this is a destination that a lot of people are going to be looking forward to playing outside of LA. So game 1 matchup, it's a late night. I'm going to be, I don't even know. I'm not going to pound the caffeine. Probably going to tape the eyes open a little bit. Just get the adrenaline going. I'm somehow going to be tomato faced for an hour at like 1 a.m. and then just absolutely KO afterwards. But I am looking forward to that game 1 matchup. That's going to be fun. Oh, you muted yourself, Ant. Unmute yourself.
It always happens to me at least once in the show.
That's okay. I know that feeling very well.
I was going to say, I'll keep you up. I'll text you and make sure you're awake for the entire game.
There you go. Please do.
Unless it gets really out of hand and then I start falling asleep. But the Mets always seem to struggle against pitchers they have never seen before or making their first starts against them. That's the only part that's a little concerning to me. I'd like to see them work him and get him out early and get into the bullpen would be nice. But I am a little more concerned for Sean Manaea. And I talked to you about this off air. In 29 at-bats for Mookie Betts, 3 home runs, 8 RBIs, 345 batting average, 1.268 OPS. Freddie Freeman in 14 at-bats only has 1 home run, 2 RBIs, but we know Freddie Freeman is just a killer. Getting
Against
on
the
base.
Mets especially, it
Against
doesn't
the Mets
matter. He's
especially,
always going
yeah.
to kill us.
Who else was it that I saw in here? Will
Max Muncy
Smith.
scares me a little bit too. You know, he's
Max
in that mix.
Muncy, yeah. It's only 6 at-bats, but he's got a home run and 2 RBIs. Will Smith, who just got his big contract, he's got 3 RBIs, batting .500 in 16 at-bats against Sean Manaea. So that's a little bit of a concern for me that Sean Manaea, who struggled against this Kansas City Royals lineup, would struggle against one of the best lineups in baseball. So that's where I'm a little concerned and why I won't pick that as my matchup of the weekend. I am looking at game 2, Gavin Stone and Jose Butto, because if Jose Butto can pitch any way that he has been pitching in his first 2 starts or since, coming back up last season, if he can shut down this lineup, he gets a rotation spot for the rest of the year for me. Absolutely.
As he should. As he should. He needs to be in that rotation until there's a justified reason for him not to be. And I love talking about going back to Mendoza and just the difference that he's been. Buck Showalter would be the guy that would give you a whole non-answer up until the day of the start, and that's fine. Like I understand a lot of coaches like to be poker faced. They don't like to give any type of slight advantage to the opponent. We see that with hockey as well. My New York Rangers are thriving right now. They got our first game this Sunday. Peter Laviolette, when asked about Filipino, one of our top young centers that's been out for the majority of the season with concussion issues, he's back with the team. He's like, you're not going to hear anything from me basically until game day. And I understand that. That makes sense. But it doesn't need to always be that way, especially when you're trying to give flowers to a young, exciting pitcher, and really showcase that, okay, if you pitch like this, we're going to back you. We are going to have support for you. So for Mendy to come out and say that, yeah, he's not going anywhere, such a breath of fresh air, just from the managerial point of view, and also for us fans to know that, again, Butto, until something drastically changes, if something drastically changes, he will be a mainstay in this rotation. I wanted him to be a starter in this rotation heading into the season. He did not crack it because, of course, the Mets wanted to see what they had in McGill first. McGill, unfortunately, was a little bit more of the story that we've seen in recent years, and that's why you can argue Tyler does make a lot more sense probably as a reliever, a multi-A reliever even, than I would say a stagnant starter the way that Butto is. This Jose Butto and Reed Garrett are two of the best pitchers currently in the organization, neither of which started the year with the club. What does that tell you? We got depth, and that's exciting.
Yeah. Sunday, besides all the Doc, commemoration and the ceremony for him, to see Jose Butto go out there, right out the bat, strike out the side in the first inning, and pitch the way he did. I know it's Kansas City and all, but and they got a pretty decent lineup themselves. But Jose Butto just continues to show that he belongs in this league. Very quiet, goes about his business, gets the job done, and is the only other guy to pitch through 6 innings in both of his starts. So please keep Jose Butto in this rotation. I don't even care when Tyler McGill comes back. If he's got to get sent down or if they got to make a 6-man rotation, whatever happens, Butto does not get sent down moving forward. And I really do like what Mendy, and it's kind of circling back, right, to talking about Mendy and David Stearns. They've really have not, like you mentioned, like they're not making you read between the lines, right? They're very upfront. They're very forward with
They're not BSing you. They're like, yeah, JD Martinez just got a cortisone shot. He legit can't swing for a couple days, but it's okay because that's what he went through with the Dodgers last year. Like, I appreciate that clarity. There's nothing wrong with that. And us fans, it makes us feel like we have a connection with the team more than there being this big barrier where Buck would come in and be like, have his approach with the media the certain way and manage to say a whole lot of nothing in a 5 to 10 minute segment.
No, yeah, Mendy has been very impressive, even throughout spring training to me, with the way he's handled press conferences. And, a lot of that stems from his time with the Yankees. Maybe he wasn't the one doing them, but he was sitting there observing and, learning, how to be a manager. And he's done that here. And, if Michael Tonkin's bad, he's getting sent down. We just got him back for free.
David Stern's masterclass. You trade him for cash considerations because he gets his tits lit by the Tigers. His first outing is against the Tigers for Minnesota. Gets lit up again. They cut him. We take him back with some extra dollars too. Again, that's the David Stern's way. Sign me up. Literally, they're the best part, Ant, and you attest to this with what you're just saying. This is a Mets bullpen too that's so much fun because they are not overly reliant if, say, you have one of your multi-aim relievers get rocked, because we know we have other options to look for, either internally, again, the Reed Garretts of the world that are blossoming before our very eyes with a 54% K rate right now, or if it's someone, again, like a Michael Tonkin, Yohan Ramirez, who's been traded. Tonkin doesn't have the worst stuff imaginable. He just had, unfortunately, a rough couple first outings with the Mets when everything was doom and gloom. There was no positivity, so it was easy to cut ties. And you know what? As you said, if Tonkin ggets lit up again, it's that easy. They got Shintaro Fujinami just waiting to be called up. They got many other options in that.
Nate Lavender,
Nate Lavender,
Ibby's big guy. Nate Lavender,
Ravelicious. You got options, baby.
Yeah, they definitely do have options, and just like how he's able to pick and choose who he wants. And last season we would have to dealt with Michael Tonkin for an entire season, like we did with Dominic Leone and Trevor Gott. And we know David Stearns has built bullpens in Milwaukee. So, I fully trust him with the way he's handling this right now. But, Wardy, man, I appreciate you so much for coming on and doing this with me, especially with your busy schedule. Just let everyone know, like, what you got coming up, any shows and the whole 9 yards.
Okay, whole 9 yards is tomorrow, pre and post game coverage. We're coming at you. I don't know however early that Mets lineup can come out.
Post game coverage at
whenever the hell the game ends, Ant. So you tell me, like, whatever it's going to be. A Saturday and Sunday is going to be interesting because I think they're both 4 p.m. Eastern games because they're 1 o'clock in LA, which is nice. It's kind of midday, but we got some big days. Saturday, Knicks start against the Sixers. I got to be locked in. I might not be covering them, but I'm still a diehard fan, so I want to be in on that. Rangers Capitals Sunday. It's just going to be a very hectic sports weekend, but we're going to come at you with coverage. My goal is to have pre and post game coverage for every game of this Dodgers series out. I've been trying to do watch parties, but there's still something holding it up on that front. So once that's taken care of, we'll get that involved. We'll get you involved, especially with that too. We're going to get you involved with pregame too. We haven't done the official announcement yet, but as a little soft tease, you will see plenty more Anthony Rivera on the Wardy and Wham YouTube channel this year than what you've seen in years prior. And we're really looking forward to that, just getting everything still figured out in the early goings of the season. I mean, the fact that we've already had, I feel like, 2 Mets seasons already. You have the 0-5 start, and now you got 10-3 over the past 13, baby. That's baseball. So, yeah, that's where you guys can check me out, of course, on Wardy and Wham YouTube channel. I go live on Twitter, too. Same handle, same applies. And thank you so much for having me on. I know this is like the 5th or 6th straight time of you trying to get me, and we finally got it because the schedule finally worked. So
we did.
Happy to make it happen.
Yeah, me too. And I'm excited to be working with you this season. Whenever it is that we begin, I know there's a lot of particulars that have to go into that, but excited, overall to be doing that with you. Quick, shout out. You mentioned Knicks and Rangers. CP covers all that on his channel as well. He'll be doing pre and post game stuff. So check out his channel.
Got the same hat. We're twins out here.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Check out his channel, CPNY Sports. Check out my guys, Keith and Key. They're doing their recap at 5 o'clock, I think, on their channel of the Pirates and Mets series.
Awesome.
Ibby as well, Till Mets Do Us Part. Every Wednesday, check them out. If I'm missing anyone, obviously Mets Weekly is out there as well. If I'm missing anyone, I apologize, but I do like to shout out to some of the great content creators that are on here. For me, if you guys checked out on Twitter, obviously we did this show 9 p.m. tonight on the Mets Evening Brew on Morning Brew Sports Network. You can catch me on the Mets Evening Brew with Al Cintron from WFAN, Eddie Presti, and our guest this week, Evan Roberts, will be joining us from WFAN. So make sure you check that out tonight, 9 p.m. And then, After that, I will release the Subway to Shea podcast for this week. And that is with my guy, Carlos, Vintage Mets. You may have seen him out at Citi Field. He's got great stuff that we just talked about this week, especially he got a whole, there you go. Yes, I love it here. Yes. Wardy, he got a whole box full of ticket stubs from a Met fan that knows he likes vintage stuff. So we're talking 69 World Series, 73 World Series, 86 stuff. And I'll have to post the video portion of that. First audio comes out, but I will post the video of all that memorabilia that he posted out for me. Really cool stuff. So if you're not following him on Instagram and Twitter, you should be. Vintage Mets, make sure you do.
Carlos is a fantastic human being. Cannot say
Yes.
enough great things about him. For those that don't know him, Vintage Mets, he's been a longtime follower of mine. I've had the privilege of interacting and meeting him. Bumped into him at Citi Field the last couple times I've been there. And one of the last times I was there, I'm pretty sure it was the Mets when they had their final series against the Phillies last year. I bumped into him in center field, and he was gracious enough to gift me these custom hats that he's made himself. This design saying, I love it here because of how much he loves Citi Field. That's where the inspiration comes from. Carlos, fantastic human being. I still need to get on his show for the Instagram lives. We just haven't aligned on timing yet, unfortunately. So happy to hear that you had an interview with him. I had no clue of that until literally an hour or two ago of doing the show. I saw your post. I'm like, Carlos, that's awesome. So I will definitely make sure to check that out. Mets fans, implore you all to do the same. This guy, when I tell you, he has probably up there with the most badass, like vintage Mets collection of shirts, hats. I mean it. Like, think about literally finding vintage 80s and 90s stuff in like perfect condition that he's rocking at Citi Field, has it all stored away. I'm sure all nice in his room or whatever. He's got the goods. Diehard Mets fan, even better human being. And he does a bunch of community work too, which is fantastic. Something that, again, no one ever needs to do. So when you go out of your way to do those things, it's just the utmost respect. So shout out to you, Carlos. We love you.
Yeah. Carlos is amazing. I see him out at Citi Field all the time, and we always chat it up while we're there. I mean, when you have a guy that has a T-shirt, a Mets T-shirt from 1990 with Doc, Bud Harrelson, Frank Viola, and John Franco on it. I mean, that's like some serious diehard stuff there. But Wardy, like I said, again, I know you're out of time here. Appreciate you. Appreciate everyone. 250 people in here joining us. Make sure you subscribe to both of us. And everyone, enjoy this series coming up. And like Wardy said, check out his pregame and postgame. He's going to need Bustelo coffee by the end of that game. So
gonna need something. We'll see what happens. Ant, thank you so much. Shout out to Grant in the chat. As always, the absolute beauty. We love you. And let's go Mets, baby. Let's have ourselves a fun series in LA.
All right, everyone. Have a good one. Let's go Mets.